Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the communications center of Earth's main military base. The massive screens around her showed star maps and ship positions across human space. She had been waiting for 3 hours for a message from New Haven Colony. The agricultural world was supposed to send its weekly report, but nothing had come through. "Still no word from New Haven, Admiral," said Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with worry. "Their last transmission was cut off mid-sentence 6 hours ago." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. New Haven was one of humanity's most successful colonies. Over 2 million people lived there, growing food for dozens of other worlds. The planet had 3 major cities, orbital stations, and a small defense fleet. It was not the kind of place that just went silent. "What was their last message?" Sarah asked. Torres pulled up the audio file. Static filled the room, then a panicked voice broke through. "This is New Haven Control to Earth Command. We are under attack by unknown alien vessels. They are targeting our cities with—" The transmission ended in a burst of interference. Sarah closed her eyes. She had been in the military for 20 years and had never heard such fear in a colonist's voice. "Send a reconnaissance probe immediately. I want to know what happened to our people." The probe would take 3 weeks to reach New Haven. It was equipped with the fastest engines humanity had built, but space was vast. During those 3 weeks, Sarah tried to contact other colonies in the area. None of them had seen anything unusual. No alien ships, no distress signals, nothing. Earth's leaders called emergency meetings. The president, the military chiefs, and colony representatives all wanted answers. Sarah had none to give them. All she could do was wait and hope that somehow the people of New Haven were still alive. When the probe finally reached New Haven's solar system, the data it sent back made Sarah's blood run cold. Where the orbital stations should have been, there was only debris. Twisted metal and plastic floated in space like a graveyard. The probe's cameras showed the planet's surface, and Sarah had to sit down when she saw the images. The 3 major cities were gone. In their place were perfect circles of melted glass, each one 20 miles across. The forests and farmlands around the cities had been burned away. Rivers had been turned to steam. Even from space, the probe's sensors could detect that the atmosphere was filled with ash and radiation. "There are no life signs," Torres reported, his voice barely a whisper. "No human settlements, no communication signals. The planet is dead." Sarah studied the data for hours. The attack had been precise and thorough. Whoever did this had used weapons powerful enough to turn entire cities into glass. They had destroyed every human structure on the planet and in orbit. It was not a battle. It was extermination. The probe collected samples from the atmosphere and debris field. Back on Earth, scientists analyzed everything they could find. After 2 days of work, they had answers that made the situation even worse. The weapon signatures match technology used by the hegemony of HFY, Dr. Martinez explained to Sarah and the other military leaders. They are a species from the outer rim, very aggressive, very territorial. Sarah had heard of the HFY. They controlled about 50 star systems and had been expanding their territory for decades. Human intelligence knew they were militaristic and considered other species inferior. But attacking a human colony was an act of war. "Why would they target New Haven?" asked General Thompson, the head of colonial defense. "It was just a farming world. No military value." Dr. Martinez pulled up a star map. "New Haven was in what?" "The HFY consider their sphere of influence. Our intelligence suggests they view human expansion as a threat to their dominance in that sector." Sarah felt anger building inside her chest. 2 million innocent people had been murdered because aliens saw them as a threat to their expansion plans. Farmers, teachers, children, all killed to send a message. "Do we know how many ships they used?" Sarah asked. "Based on the destruction pattern, approximately 1,000 vessels," Dr. Martinez replied. "It was a significant force, but not their entire fleet. 1,000 ships to murder 2 million humans." Sarah had seen enough war to know that this was not just military action. This was genocide. The Kethvar had decided that humans did not deserve to exist in their territory, so they had wiped out everyone on New Haven as a warning. The probe continued to orbit the dead world, sending back more data. There were no survivors hiding in underground shelters, no escape pods that had made it to space. The Kethvar had been thorough in their extermination. They had even destroyed the orbital farms and research stations that posed no military threat. Sarah walked to her office after the briefing. On her desk was a picture from New Haven's last harvest festival. Smiling families posed in front of golden wheat fields. Children played in the background while their parents celebrated another successful growing season. Now those fields were radioactive ash and those families were molecular vapor. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Admiral, the President wants to see you immediately. Emergency session with the Defense Council." Sarah knew what was coming. Earth's leaders would want options for response. They would ask about military capabilities and strategic targets. The Kethvar had just declared war on humanity by destroying New Haven. Now Earth had to decide how to answer. As she walked to the meeting, Sarah thought about the people of New Haven. They had volunteered to leave Earth and build a new life, among the stars. They had turned an empty world into a garden that fed millions. They had been peaceful, productive, and happy, and aliens had murdered them all because they existed in the wrong place. The Kethvar thought they were sending a message about human expansion. They wanted to show that they could destroy any human world they chose. They probably expected Earth to retreat, to abandon colonies in their territory to avoid more attacks. They were about to learn that they had made a terrible mistake. Humans did not abandon their own. When someone attacked human civilians, Earth responded with everything it had. The Kethvar had killed 2 million innocent people. Earth was about to show them what justice looked like when delivered by an angry planet with the largest industrial base in the galaxy. Sarah reached the meeting room and took her seat. Around the table, she saw the same cold fury in every face that she felt in her own heart. The President looked at each person in turn. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to discuss our response to the genocide committed against New Haven Colony. Admiral Chen, I want your honest assessment of our military options." Sarah stood up and activated the holographic display. Star maps showed human territory, Kethvar space, and the location where New Haven had once been. She looked at each face around the table and spoke with quiet certainty. "Mr. President, the Kethvar used 1,000 ships to destroy New Haven. They think they have sent us a message about their military strength." She paused and let her words sink in. "I recommend we send them a reply they will never forget." The war was about to begin. The Iron Consensus, the emergency session, lasted 18 hours. In that time, something unprecedented happened in human politics. The Terran Defense Council, which normally spent months arguing about budget allocations and territorial disputes, reached complete agreement in less than a day. Admiral Sarah Chen watched as representatives from every human nation and colony spoke. The delegate from Mars stood first, his red uniform reflecting the lights of the council chamber. "The Mars Defense Force places all our ships at Earth's disposal. Every vessel, every crew member, every weapon we have built. The Jupiter Federation." Representative stood next. "Our industrial shipyards will work around the clock. We can build more ships than any species in the galaxy has ever seen." One by one, every human government made the same pledge. The outer colonies, who usually complained about Earth's policies, offered their patrol fleets without reservation. The asteroid miners, who rarely got involved in politics, promised to convert their cargo ships into supply vessels. Even the independent traders and mercenary groups volunteered their services. President Martinez had called it the Iron Consensus. For the first time in human history, every branch of humanity was united behind a single goal. The Kethvar had given them something that centuries of politics had failed to achieve: complete unity. "Admiral Chen," the President said, "you will have supreme command of all human military forces. Your mission is simple. Make the Kethvar pay for what they did to New Haven. Sarah accepted the position with a heavy heart. She understood what the president was really asking. This was not just about military strategy or territorial defense. This was about showing the galaxy that humans protected their own, no matter the cost. Within hours of the council meeting, ships began moving toward Earth. The planet's orbital space filled with vessels of every size and type. Massive dreadnoughts from the core worlds arrived alongside small frigates from frontier colonies. Transport ships brought supplies, ammunition, and fuel from across human space. The logistics were staggering. 700,000 ships needed coordination, supply lines, and battle plans. Sarah established her command center on Luna Base, where the massive computers could handle the data flow from such an enormous fleet. Her staff worked in shifts around the clock, organizing humanity's greatest military undertaking. The shipyards worked at maximum capacity. Earth's moon-based factories churned out new vessels every day. Mars contributed its famous heavy cruisers, built in the low gravity of the red planet's shipyards. Jupiter's gas mining platforms provided fuel for the fleet, while the asteroid belt supplied raw materials for weapons and armor. Other species watched humanity's mobilization with growing alarm. The Centauri Republic sent diplomatic messages urging restraint. The Arcturian Trade Alliance offered to mediate between humans and the Kethvar. Even the mysterious vegan collective, who rarely communicated with other species, sent warnings about the dangers of galactic warfare. Sarah read each message and filed them away. She appreciated the concern of humanity's allies, but this was not a matter for diplomacy. The Kethvar had committed genocide. They had murdered 2 million innocent people without warning or negotiation. The time for talking had ended when New Haven cities turned to glass. The fleet assembly took 6 months. During that time, intelligence reports came in about Kethvar movements. They were reinforcing their border systems and calling in ships from across their empire. Apparently, they had not expected such a massive human response to their attack on New Haven. "They think we are bluffing," reported Commander Kim from the Intelligence Division. "Kethvar communications intercepts suggest they believe humans are too weak and divided to mount a serious military campaign." Sarah smiled grimly. The Kethvar were about to learn how wrong they were. Human beings might argue about politics and trade disputes, but they never hesitated when their people were threatened. The aliens had killed human children. Now they would face the consequences. The Iron Fleet, as it came to be called, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 700,000 ships formed battle groups across dozens of star systems. Each group was larger than most species' entire military forces. The largest battle group, led by Sarah herself, contained 50,000 ships, including Earth's most powerful dreadnoughts. Sarah stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, humanity's newest and most advanced warship. Through the viewports, she could see hundreds of other vessels in formation. Their hulls gleamed with fresh armor plating and their weapons arrays bristled with destructive power. Each ship carried crews who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return home. "Admiral, we are receiving final crew reports from all battle groups," announced Captain Williams, Sarah's second-in-command. 700,000 ships, 15 million crew members, all ready for combat operations. 15 million humans had volunteered to avenge New Haven. They came from every world, every background, every profession. Former merchants commanded converted cargo ships loaded with missiles. Mining engineers operated vessels designed to crack asteroids but perfectly capable of cracking alien warships. Military academy graduates served alongside grizzled veterans who had fought pirates in the outer systems. The diversity of the fleet was its greatest strength. Unlike the standardized forces most species used, the Iron Fleet combined dozens of different ship designs and tactical approaches. Some battle groups specialized in long-range bombardment. Others focused on fast attack runs or defensive operations. The Kethvar would face an enemy that could adapt to any situation. Sarah received the final intelligence briefing before departure. The Kethvar Empire controlled 57 star systems with a total population of approximately 30 billion. Their military consisted of roughly 100,000 ships, most of them smaller than human vessels but equipped with the powerful weapons that had destroyed New Haven. "They are consolidating their forces," reported the intelligence officer. "It appears they plan to defend their core systems and abandon their outer territories if necessary." That suited Sarah perfectly. She did not want to chase Kethvar ships across the galaxy. She wanted to find them, defeat them completely, and make sure they never again considered attacking human civilians. The departure ceremony was broadcast across human space. Representatives from every world spoke about New Haven and the people who had died there. A moment of silence was observed for the victims, followed by readings of their names. It took 3 hours to read every name, and Sarah listened to each. 1. Maria Santos, age 7, who had wanted to be a teacher. Dr. Robert Kim, who had developed new farming techniques that fed millions. The Morrison family, who had just celebrated their first successful harvest on their new farm. 2 million names, 2 million lives cut short by alien hatred. As the ceremony ended, Sarah gave the order that would begin humanity's largest military campaign. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. Set course for Kethvar territory. We have people to remember and justice to deliver." The hyperspace engines of 700,000 ships charged simultaneously. Space itself seemed to bend around the massive fleet as they prepared to jump across the galaxy. Other species watching the departure would later describe it as terrifying and beautiful, like watching a force of nature given purpose and direction. Sarah thought about the Kethvar leadership, probably confident in their military strength and secure in their fortified worlds. They had attacked what they saw as a weak human farming colony, expecting no serious response. They had calculated that humanity would retreat rather than risk galactic warfare. They were about to discover that they had miscalculated everything about human nature. The species that had turned dead worlds into gardens would now turn their industrial might toward war. The people who had built cities in the depths of space would bring that same determination to destroying those who threatened their children. The hyperspace jump began, and 700,000 ships disappeared into the void between stars. The Iron Fleet was going to war, carrying with it the combined fury of an entire species. The Kethvar had wanted to send humanity a message about power and territory. Earth was about to deliver a reply written in fire and steel that would echo across the galaxy for generations. The Long Hunt. The first Kethvar system fell in 4 hours. Admiral Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the Retribution as her forces surrounded the outer world of Kelthak. 50,000 human ships emerged from hyperspace simultaneously. Their weapons trained on the planet's orbital defenses. The Kethvar commander obviously expected a negotiation. His transmission came through within minutes, translated by the ship's computers. "Human fleet, you are violating hegemony space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Sarah's response was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Any hostile action will result in the complete elimination of your forces." The alien commander's reply came back filled with what the translators identified as laughter. "Foolish humans, you face the might of the Kethvar hegemony. We will destroy you as we destroyed your pathetic colony." That was the wrong thing to say. Sarah gave the order, and 20,000 human ships opened fire simultaneously. The Kethvar defense fleet, numbering roughly 800 vessels, lasted exactly 11 minutes. Their ships were well designed, and their crews fought bravely, but they faced overwhelming firepower from every direction. The orbital defense platforms around Kelthak fell next. Massive structures that had taken decades to build were reduced to expanding clouds of debris in minutes. The humans used precise, overwhelming force that left no room for resistance or escape. When the shooting stopped, Sarah opened a channel to the planet's surface. People of Kelthak, your military forces have been defeated. You will not be harmed if you do not resist. We are here to end your government's ability to commit genocide, not to harm civilians. The planet surrendered, without further fighting. Sarah left a small garrison force and moved the main fleet to the next system. This became the pattern for humanity's advance through Kethvar space. Arrive in overwhelming numbers, demand surrender, and destroy any resistance completely. The second system took 3 hours. The third took 6 hours, but only because the Kethvar had fortified it more heavily. By the end of the first month, 12 Kethvar systems had fallen to human forces. Each victory was broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing other species what happened when someone murdered human civilians. The Kethvar military tried different strategies. They attempted ambushes in deep space, using their knowledge of local space routes to surprise human battle groups. The ambushes failed because humans brought so many ships that losing a few hundred vessels barely affected their combat capability. They tried hit-and-run attacks on human supply lines. This strategy also failed because Earth had prepared for a long campaign. Supply convoys were protected by battle groups larger than most species' entire fleets. When Kethvar raiders attacked a convoy of ammunition ships, they found themselves facing 5,000 human warships instead of the few dozen escorts they expected. The Kethvar leadership sent increasingly desperate messages to other galactic powers, asking for military assistance or diplomatic intervention. Most species politely declined to get involved. A few tried to mediate, but Sarah's response was always the same. Unconditional surrender was the only acceptable outcome. They killed our children, she told the Centauri ambassador during one attempted negotiation. They turned our cities to glass and laughed about it. There will be no compromise with genocidal killers. 3 months into the campaign, the Iron Fleet had conquered half of Kethvar space. The human advance was methodical and unstoppable. Each system was surrounded, isolated, and given one chance to surrender. Most Kethvar commanders chose to fight, confident in their military training and advanced weapons. They learned that superior numbers could overcome any tactical advantage. Human ships might be individually weaker than Kethvar vessels, but when 100 human ships attacked one alien vessel, the outcome was never in doubt. Human crews were well-trained and determined, fighting with the memory of New Haven to drive them forward. Commander Torres, now serving as Sarah's intelligence chief, reported on Kethvar morale. Their communications are becoming increasingly panicked. They are pulling ships from their outer territories to defend their core systems. This suited Sarah's strategy perfectly. She wanted the Kethvar to concentrate their forces. It would make the final battle more decisive and prevent scattered remnants from continuing to threaten human colonies later. The Iron Fleet adapted its tactics as the campaign progressed. Some battle groups specialized in siege warfare, slowly grinding down heavily fortified systems. Others focused on rapid strikes against lightly defended worlds. The most mobile groups hunted down fleeing Kethvar ships, ensuring that no significant enemy forces escaped to cause trouble later. Human industrial capacity proved decisive in sustaining the campaign. Earth's shipyards replaced losses faster than the Kethvar could inflict them. Ammunition factories worked around the clock to keep the fleet supplied. Medical ships evacuated wounded crew members and returned them to fighting condition within weeks. The Kethvar tried to match human industrial output, but their economy was based on conquest rather than production. They had taken what they needed from conquered worlds rather than building their own manufacturing base. When human forces cut their supply lines and captured their shipyards, Kethvar production collapsed. By the 4th month, captured Kethvar officers were talking freely about their empire's situation. The translation computers revealed growing desperation in their military communications. Units were reporting equipment failures they could not repair and ammunition shortages that could not be resupplied. Sarah felt no sympathy for their predicament. These were the same forces that had killed every human being on New Haven without warning or mercy. If they were running out of ammunition, they should have thought about that before committing genocide. The campaign reached a turning point when The Iron Fleet captured the major industrial world of Kethros. The planet's shipyards had produced a significant portion of the Kethvar fleet, and its fall crippled their ability to replace losses. More importantly, the planet's databanks contained complete intelligence on Kethvar military deployments and strategic plans. They are consolidating everything at their homeworld, Torres reported after analyzing the captured data. Every remaining ship, every defense platform, every weapon they have left. They are planning to make their final stand at Kethvar Prime. Sarah studied the tactical displays showing the enemy's last stronghold. Kethvar Prime was heavily fortified with orbital weapons platforms, defensive fleets, and planetary shields. The Kethvar had spent centuries building it into an impregnable fortress. Under normal circumstances, attacking such a position would cost an enormous number of ships and lives, but these were not normal circumstances. Sarah commanded 700,000 ships against an enemy that now had fewer than 20,000 functional vessels. The Kethvar had built their fortress to withstand conventional attacks. They had not planned for an assault by the largest military force in galactic history. The final preparations took 2 weeks. Sarah assembled her most powerful battle groups for the assault on Kethvar Prime. 200,000 ships would participate in the attack, while the remaining forces secured conquered territory and prevented any chance of Kethvar reinforcement. As the fleet prepared for hyperspace jump to the enemy homeworld, Sarah addressed her forces one final time. Her message was broadcast to every ship in the Iron Fleet, reaching the millions of humans who had spent months fighting to avenge New Haven. We are about to finish what the Kethvar started when they murdered our people. They chose genocide as their weapon. We choose justice as ours. Remember New Haven. Remember why we are here. Let every species in the galaxy know that humanity protects its own. The hyperspace engines charged, and 200,000 ships prepared to deliver the final blow to the Kethvar Empire. The long hunt through alien space was almost over. Soon, the species that had laughed while burning human children alive would face the full consequences of their actions. Sarah thought about the families on New Haven who would never see this day. They deserved to witness the justice being delivered in their names. The best she could do was ensure that their deaths had meaning, that their sacrifice would prevent other human children from suffering the same fate. The jump began, and the largest battle fleet in galactic history disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with it the promise of final justice for the dead of New Haven Colony. The Kethvar homeworld, 200,000 human ships emerged from hyperspace around Kethvar Prime like a swarm of angry metal insects. Admiral Sarah Chen watched the tactical displays as her fleet took positions around the alien homeworld. The planet hung before them, a blue-green sphere surrounded by layers of defensive platforms and patrol ships. The Kethvar had spent their entire history building their homeworld into a fortress. Massive orbital weapons platforms circled the planet in 3 defensive rings. Energy shields protected the platforms from long-range attack. Defense fleets patrolled between the rings, ready to intercept any attacking force. It was an impressive sight, the kind of defensive system that had protected Kethvar Prime for centuries. Under normal circumstances, it would have been nearly impossible to assault. But the circumstances were far from normal. Enemy fleet composition? Sarah asked. Captain Williams. Approximately 18,000 ships of various classes, Williams replied, studying the sensor data. Their orbital defenses include over 3,000 weapons platforms. Planetary shields are active around all major population centers. Sarah nodded. The Kethvar had gathered every ship they had left for this final battle. Their entire remaining military force was concentrated around their homeworld. It was exactly what she had hoped for. One decisive engagement that would end their ability to threaten human colonies. The first communication from the planet came within minutes. The voice belonged to someone who identified himself as Supreme. Commander Velthak, leader of all Kethvar forces. Human Admiral, you have won several battles against our outer systems. But now you face the true power of the hegemony. Withdraw your forces, and we may consider allowing some of your ships to escape destruction. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her response would be heard by every human and Kethvar in the system. Supreme Commander Velthak, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. 4 months ago, your forces destroyed New Haven Colony and murdered 2 million innocent humans. We are here to ensure that such an atrocity never happens again. There was a pause before Velthak replied. When he did, his voice carried the same arrogant tone that had marked Kethvar communications throughout the war. New Haven was a military necessity. Your species was expanding into our territory. We simply removed the threat before it could grow larger. Sarah felt her anger rise, but kept her voice calm. You murdered children in their schools and families in their homes. You turned entire cities to glass without warning. That was not military action, it was genocide. Your opinion is irrelevant, Velthak responded. You face the combined might of our empire. 18,000 ships and 3,000 orbital platforms await your attack. How many of your people will you sacrifice for your foolish quest for revenge? Sarah looked around the bridge at her officers. She saw the same cold determination in their faces that she felt in her own heart. These were people who had spent months fighting their way through Kethvar space, witnessing the evidence of alien cruelty on every world they liberated. Supreme Commander, you seem to have miscounted our fleet, Sarah said. We are not here with a few hundred ships hoping to win through superior tactics. We brought 200,000 warships to your homeworld. We are not here to fight your 18,000 ships. We are here to eliminate them. The communication channel went silent. Sarah could imagine the shock on the alien bridge as they processed what she had said. 200,000 ships was 10 times larger than their entire defending force. The Kethvar had never faced such overwhelming odds. Begin the attack, Sarah ordered. All battle groups commence bombardment of outer defensive ring. The space around Kethvar Prime lit up with weapons fire. 50,000 human ships opened fire simultaneously on the orbital platforms defending the planet's outer perimeter. The energy output was so massive that it temporarily overloaded several sensor systems. The Kethvar platforms returned fire, their powerful weapons cutting through human ships like knives through paper. But for every human vessel destroyed, 100 more continued the attack. The platforms had been designed to defeat attacking fleets of a few thousand ships, not a force that darkened the entire star system. The first defensive ring fell in 30 minutes. The massive platforms that had protected Kethvar Prime for generations were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. The Kethvar defense fleet tried to intervene, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. 18,000 ships could not fight 200,000 and hope to survive. Supreme Commander Velthak opened communications again as his outer defenses crumbled. Admiral Chen, perhaps we can reach an understanding. The hegemony is prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict. Sarah's response was immediate. The time for negotiations ended when you turned our children into ash. Surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. We are a proud people, Velthak replied. We will not bow to human demands. Then you will die for your pride, Sarah said, and ordered the attack to continue. The second defensive ring lasted an hour. The Kethvar had concentrated their most powerful weapons there, and the platforms fought with desperate courage. Human losses mounted into the thousands as alien beams tore through ship after ship, but the outcome was never in doubt. Superior. Numbers overcame every tactical advantage. As the second ring fell, something unexpected happened. Individual Kethvar ships began breaking formation and fleeing the battle. They were not retreating in an organized fashion. They were simply running in panic as they realized the hopelessness of their situation. Should we pursue the fleeing ships? Asked Captain Williams. Sarah considered the question. Part of her wanted to hunt down every Kethvar vessel and destroy them all. But she had a larger purpose here. Let them go. Our goal is to end their ability to threaten human colonies, not to exterminate their entire species. The final defensive ring put up the strongest resistance. These platforms were built into the planet's orbital infrastructure and could not easily retreat. Their crews knew they were fighting for their homeworld and gave everything they had. It was not enough. 20,000 human ships concentrated their fire on each platform, overwhelming their shields and armor through sheer firepower. The weapons that had destroyed New Haven were turned to scrap metal by human determination and superior numbers. As the last orbital platform exploded, HFY Prime lay defenseless before the human fleet. The planetary shield still protected the major cities, but they were designed to stop bombardment from space, not invasion from the ground. Supreme Commander Veltak made one final transmission. His voice had lost its arrogant tone and now carried, "Only desperation. Admiral Chen, we surrender. The hegemony formally surrenders to human forces. Please, spare our civilians." Sarah looked at the defenseless planet below her fleet. She could order an orbital bombardment that would turn every HFY city to glass, just as they had done to New Haven. It would be perfect revenge, justice measured, in equal destruction. But that was not who humans were. The people of New Haven had been farmers and teachers and children. They had built schools and hospitals, not weapons platforms and military bases. Humans fought to protect the innocent, not to murder them. "Supreme Commander Veltak, your surrender is accepted," Sarah announced. "All HFY military forces will lay down their weapons immediately. Your government is dissolved as of this moment. HFY Prime is now under human administration." She switched to the fleet communication system. "All forces, prepare for ground assault. We will occupy every military installation and government facility on the planet. Civilian areas are not to be targeted. Anyone who harms non-combatants will answer to me personally." The landing began within hours. Human ships filled the skies over HFY Prime as assault transports descended toward military targets. The HFY military, seeing the massive force arrayed against them, surrendered without significant resistance. Sarah herself landed with the first wave, choosing to accept the surrender of the HFY leadership in person. She stood in the ruins of their military command center, surrounded by alien officers who had spent months fighting against her forces. Supreme Commander Veltak was a tall creature with gray skin and large eyes that seemed to hold centuries of military pride. When he offered his weapon in surrender, Sarah could see that it was the most difficult moment of his life. "You have defeated us completely," he said through the translator. "We expected you to be weak, divided, easily intimidated. We were wrong about everything." Sarah took his weapon but did not feel triumphant. Too many people had died for this moment to bring any satisfaction. "You were wrong about human nature, Commander. We do not start wars, but we finish them. The occupation of HFY Prime took 3 days. Human forces secured every military installation, government building, and weapons facility on the planet. The HFY civilian population watched in amazement as human soldiers distributed food and medical supplies instead of weapons and destruction. As Sarah stood in the former hegemony capital, looking out at the alien city that was now under human control, she thought about New Haven. The people there would never see this day, never know that their deaths had been avenged. But their sacrifice had ensured that no other human children would suffer the same fate. The New Galactic Order. 6 months after the fall of HFY Prime, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the ruins of New Haven's main city. The glass crater stretched for miles in every direction, a permanent scar on the planet's surface. Radiation levels had dropped enough for humans to visit safely, but the land would never again support the farms and homes that had once thrived there. The memorial they built was simple but powerful. 2 million names were carved into black stone, pillars arranged in a perfect circle around the crater's edge. At the center, a single flame burned eternally, fed by geothermal energy from deep beneath the planet's surface. It would burn forever, a reminder of the price of genocide and the determination of those who came after. Sarah walked slowly along the memorial wall, reading names she remembered from the evacuation lists. Families who had volunteered to build a new world among the stars. Children who would never grow up. teachers who would never see another classroom, all victims of alien hatred and military pride. The Kethvar Empire no longer existed. After the surrender at their homeworld, human administrators had systematically dismantled every aspect of their government and military. The process had been thorough but surprisingly merciful. Unlike the Kethvar treatment of New Haven, humans had made sure that civilian populations were protected and cared for. The former Kethvar worlds were now organized into the Human Protection Zone, administered directly by Earth's colonial government. The alien populations were relocated to a dozen carefully selected planets where they could rebuild their society under strict supervision. They would be watched for generations, but they would be allowed to live. It was the right decision, said Captain Williams, who had joined Sarah for the memorial dedication. Showing mercy to their civilians proves that we are better than they were. Sarah nodded, though part of her still wondered if complete destruction might have been more appropriate. The Kethvar had shown no mercy to New Haven. Why should humans be more generous to those who had committed genocide? But she knew the answer. Humans were better than the Kethvar because they chose to be better. The people of New Haven had been peaceful, productive, and kind. Honoring their memory meant acting with the same values they had lived by, even toward their killers. The memorial ceremony was attended by representatives from across human space and beyond. Every human world sent delegations to remember the dead and witness the promise that such an atrocity would never be allowed to happen again. Several alien species also attended, their ambassadors laying flowers at the memorial walls. The Centauri Republic's ambassador spoke for many when she addressed the gathering. Today, we remember not only the victims of New Haven, but the lesson their deaths taught the galaxy. Humanity has shown that it possesses both the power to wage devastating war and the wisdom to show mercy in victory. The campaign against the Kethvar had changed everything about humanity's position in galactic politics. Before New Haven, humans were seen as a young species, rapidly expanding but not particularly threatening to established powers. After the Iron Fleet's demonstration of overwhelming military force, every alien government suddenly wanted better relations with Earth. Trade agreements that had been stalled for years were suddenly approved within weeks. Territorial disputes that had dragged on for decades were resolved in humanity's favor. Species that had never acknowledged human claims to star systems now formally recognized Earth's sovereignty over vast regions of space. Sarah found the change both satisfying and disturbing. It was good that humans were finally being treated with respect, but troubling that respect came only through fear. She had hoped that other species would value human friendship for its own sake, not because they were afraid of human warships. Chatu. Numbers told the story of humanity's new status. The Iron Fleet had lost approximately 15,000 ships during the campaign, less than 3% of the force that had set out to avenge New Haven. Earth's shipyards had already replaced those losses and built thousands more vessels. The industrial capacity that had sustained the war effort continued to produce new ships even in peacetime. Other species looked at those numbers and realized what they meant. Humanity could field the largest military force in galactic history, without straining their economy or depleting their reserves. The ships that had conquered the Kethvar Empire were just a fraction of what Earth could build if truly threatened. The former Kethvar territories presented both opportunities and challenges for human administration. Many of the conquered worlds had valuable resources or strategic locations, but they also had alien populations that needed to be integrated peacefully into human space. Sarah had been appointed as the first governor of the Protection Zone, responsible for managing this complex transition. The work was difficult but rewarding. Human engineers rebuilt the infrastructure that had been damaged during the war. Human doctors provided medical care to alien populations who had been neglected by their former government. Human teachers established schools where young Kethvar could learn about peaceful coexistence instead of military conquest. Not all the former Kethvar accepted their new situation gracefully. Small groups of military holdouts continued to launch guerrilla attacks against human installations. A few extremist factions talked about rebuilding their empire and reclaiming their former glory. But these groups found little support among civilian populations who were experiencing peace and prosperity for the first time in generations. The galaxy's major powers watched humanity's administration of the conquered territory with great interest. The Arcturian Trade Alliance had expected humans to exploit the former Kethvar worlds for their resources and labor. Instead, they saw infrastructure improvements and civilian welfare programs. The Vegan Collective had predicted harsh oppression of the conquered populations. Instead, they witnessed education initiatives and cultural preservation efforts. Sarah understood that humanity was being tested. Every decision about the former Kethvar territories would be scrutinized by other species, who were trying to understand what kind of galactic power Earth intended to become. The choices made now would determine humanity's reputation for centuries to come. The test came when a group of young Kethvar rebels attacked a human medical facility, killing 12 staff members who had been providing free health care to alien children. The rebels claimed they were fighting for their people's freedom and demanded that humans leave their traditional territory. Some human politicians called for massive retaliation. The rebels had murdered innocent people who were trying to help, their former enemies. Military officers suggested that harsh punishment was necessary to prevent further attacks. Sarah made a different choice. She ordered the rebels captured alive and put on trial in civilian courts. They were convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, but they were allowed to speak in their own defense and represented by competent lawyers. Their families were not punished or harassed. The trial was broadcast throughout the galaxy. Other species watched as humans applied their justice system fairly even to those who had killed their people. It was a powerful demonstration that Earth's legal principles applied equally to all, regardless of species or political affiliation. The memorial service concluded with the lighting of the eternal flame. Sarah placed the torch into the central brazier, and fire bloomed against the darkening sky. Around the crater's edge, 2 million names caught the flickering light, ensuring that the dead of New Haven would never be forgotten. As the crowd dispersed, Sarah remained at the memorial with a small group of survivors. These were people who had been off-world when New Haven was attacked, or who had emigrated to other colonies before the destruction. They were the living remnants of a community that had been wiped from existence. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked Dr. Elizabeth Santos, whose daughter Maria had been among the youngest victims. "Showing mercy to the people who killed our children?" Sarah considered the question carefully. It was one she had asked herself many times during the long months of occupation and reconstruction. "I think the people of New Haven would have wanted us to be better than their killers," she replied. "They built their colony to show the galaxy what humanity could achieve through peace and cooperation. If we had responded to genocide with genocide, we would have dishonored their memory." Dr. Santos nodded slowly. "Maria always said she wanted to help people from other worlds learn to grow food like we did. Maybe helping the Kethvar rebuild is a way of continuing her work." As Sarah left the memorial, she thought about the future of human space. The Iron Fleet had dispersed back to their home systems, but the message they had sent would resonate for generations. Humanity would protect its people with overwhelming force when necessary, but it would also show mercy to defeated enemies and justice to all who lived under its protection. The galaxy had learned that humans were not a species to be trifled with, but more importantly, it had learned that humans were a species that could be trusted with power. The tears shed over New Haven's graves had watered the seeds of a new galactic order, one where genocide would find no refuge and justice would be delivered by those strong enough to enforce it.